All right, welcome, welcome. Welcome to part 2 of the Transformational Shift Workshop Series. Today, let me get this presentation started. There we go. Today is all about nervous system regulation. And before we get into the arrival practice, I want to do kind of a quick recap of last time. I guess it's actually, yeah. So last week we did an overview of the transformational shift framework for shifting out of survival mode and into thriving mode. And the whole point of this entire workshop series is really about expanding how you think about wellness, because a lot of us think of health, diet, or working out when we think of health. And there's a whole other side to our health and wellness that we often forget about. And stress management is a huge, huge piece of that. And last week we talked a little bit about how we can use practices to activate the parasympathetic nervous system to help manage our stress response. We talked a little bit about the health effects of chronic stress, both mental and physical. We talked about regulating your nervous system to support the mindset work that we're going to be doing later in this workshop series. And yeah, like I said before, I feel like, nervous system work, regulating our nervous system, learning to manage stress is really going to be the cornerstone of all of the work we're going to be doing in this series. So this is, like, for me, the most important piece here right now. So let's go ahead and do a quick arrival practice just to, get some grounding here. Just to come back to ourselves and get settled in here. So take a moment and find a comfortable position, either seated or laying down. And begin to notice what is happening in your body right now. And as we're noticing, we're not labeling anything as good or bad. We're just noticing the sensations and the signals in your body as an observer, without shame, without judgment, just observing the information that our body is sending us right now. Good. Now let's take a moment and bring your attention to your breath. We're not really changing anything about it here. We're just noticing what's happening. What is the depth of the breath? Does your breath feel stuck? Are you feeling resistance? And if we are feeling resistance or are feeling some stuckness, just breathe through it. Good. Now let's deepen the breath. On the inhale, bring the oxygen deep into your lower belly. And on the exhale, release it with a deep sigh. Ah. And again, on the inhale, bringing the oxygen deep into your belly. And on the exhale, releasing it with a sigh. Ah. Go ahead and do this a couple more times on your own. Really honoring your own rhythm. Just going at your own pace. And now slowly bring your awareness back to the present moment. Back to your body and your felt sensations. And when you're ready, open your eyes and just take a moment and notice if you're feeling different in your body, like the way that you're seated, maybe the way that you're bringing in information and perceiving things. So I like to do these kind of introductory practices because, oftentimes we can go throughout our days, or in this case, our mornings, and perhaps, pick up some tension and store it in our bodies. And, as we're going through this information today, um, my goal and my hope is for you to be more open to receiving it and ready for some of the practices that we're going to be doing throughout this workshop. So today's workshop is all about understanding the nervous system. We'll kind of be breaking down how we perceive stress, how we perceive some of the concepts around stress, our stress response, for example. And we'll also talk about how we can manage this response in a way that, supports our health, because that's what this is all about. It's about supporting our health in a more holistic way. So I talked a little bit about this, about how regulating our nervous system can support any mindset work that we're doing. But it really comes back to this right here. It's that when we come back into relationship with our body and learn to regulate ourselves, we expand our capacity for experiencing life and everything it brings our way. And beyond that, and well, this is probably included in this statement here, but we expand our capacity for dealing with stress. And in our world today, we are bombarded with stressors all throughout our day. And so if we can increase our capacity for dealing with that, just think about the ease and the peace and the resilience that you can develop within yourself as a result of that increased capacity. All right. So now we'll get into the nervous system, what our stress response actually looks like. So as we go throughout the world, we are given a very specific definition of what stress is, right? So we're just going to take a moment here and think about what your definition of stress is. And if you have a journal or a notebook with you, feel free to write down what your definition of stress is. Sometimes writing it down kind of allows something to come out that might not normally come out if you're just, thinking about it in your brain, in your mind. Yeah. What is your definition of stress? Once you have that definition of stress, we can move on. If you need more time to think this through or write down your answer, you can go ahead and pause right here. But before we get into really deconstructing the nervous system a little bit more, I want to emphasize that stress is not inherently bad. And the working definition that we'll be using today is that stress is our body's way of adapting to our external circumstances and changes in our external circumstances. So we're going to do a quick practice here. So you can stay seated or you can feel free to stand up here, whatever feels best to you. And we're just going to snap, right? And I'll continue snapping, but feel free to snap on your own in your own space. And as we bring our attention to this snapping, we're going to allow our awareness to come out and meet this sound. So it's like every part of your skin has some kind of sensor or, like an auditory sensor that's coming out to meet the vibration of the snap. Good. And just notice what is going on in your body as we do this practice. And we're going to now switch. We're going to do some more snapping, but this time, instead of coming out, bringing your awareness out to meet the sound, you're going to hold back. You're going to allow yourself to receive the sound here. So we're not coming out to meet it. We're allowing the vibration of this sound to enter into our awareness, into our body, and we're just receiving it. So we'll go ahead and start again with the snapping. And again, just allowing ourselves to receive the vibrations, to allow them to just sink in. And just notice what is happening in your body as you do this. Excuse me. All right, and now let's switch back. So let's switch back to the first piece of this where we were bringing our awareness out to meet the sound. So again, we're coming out to meet the vibrations. Like your skin has little sensors that are coming out to meet it. And again, noticing what's happening in your body as you bring your awareness out to meet the sound. You can pause your snapping and just take a moment to kind of tune into what's happening inside of your body. And now let's switch back, right, to the second one, where we're allowing ourselves to receive. Again, receiving the vibrations, allowing them to sink into our body. And notice what is happening in your body as you do this. And again, if you have a notebook with you, feel free to write down the difference between coming out to meet it and allowing yourself to receive it. The different sensations that are happening inside of you. So the activity that we just did was activating the sympathetic nervous system and activating the parasympathetic nervous system. So when we were bringing our awareness out to meet the sound, that was activating the sympathetic nervous system. When we were allowing ourselves to receive, that was activating the parasympathetic nervous system. So oftentimes we think sympathetic nervous system good, parasympathetic bad, right? Because oftentimes it's the sympathetic that gets us into that fight or flight mode, and the parasympathetic that brings us out of it. But how has your perspective shifted of the two after doing that activity, right? Bringing your awareness out to meet the sound probably didn't feel negative to you, did it? So today we'll be mostly talking about the peripheral nervous system on the right of the screen. We'll talk a little bit about the somatic nervous system in terms of mobilization. And if you don't know, the somatic nervous system is about the voluntary movement of yourself, your body. And we'll talk a little bit about how mobilization helps us complete the stress response and bring our system back to homeostasis. Because, with the autonomic nervous system, when our stress response is activated, we get this buildup of energy, right? And we can activate the parasympathetic nervous system and downregulate the sympathetic nervous system, which we'll get into in a bit. But we're not really releasing that energy, right? We're not really allowing it to be released properly. And so that's where mobilization comes in. It's after the activation of our stress response, we are allowing that energy to actually be released through movement. And we'll do an activity in a bit that kind of speaks to that. So I recently, if you follow me on Instagram, I recently did a post about the cycle of stress and how our system responds to stressors. So when we perceive something as being a threat to our well-being, again, it's always a perception. When we perceive something as being a threat to our well-being, that activates a stress response in our system. So first, when our sympathetic nervous system is activated, we enter the alarm stage. And this is when we enter into that fight or flight mode, when when our stress hormones are released, when we feel that buildup of energy. And after the initial, alert stage or alarm stage is over, and after the stressor has, been dealt with in some way, or it's subsided in some way, we enter the adaptive or resistant stage. And in this stage, our body begins to go back to normal. So we're releasing lower levels of stress hormone, where our blood pressure is slowly lowering. But we do remain in an alert state of mind and state of, an alert physical state as well. And this is like in case that stressor comes back and we have to deal with it again, right? But the goal at this stage is to allow those stress hormone levels and blood pressure and all that to come all the way back to the pre-stress response state or homeostasis. But the trap that we often fall into with chronic stress is that we experience the same stressor or several different stressors too frequently or over extended periods of time. And this interrupts our ability to come back to homeostasis. And when we get stuck in this state of, not fully being able to go back and just having our stress response constantly reactivated, this is when we enter exhaustion or burnout. And this means that our resources, mental, emotional, physical, are all tapped out. It means that we have nothing left to deal with the constant bombardment of stressors in our lives. And this is where we can begin to develop chronic illness, chronic pain, mental health problems. It's because we're all tapped out. We have nothing left to be able to respond to any additional stimuli and stressors that are coming up in our lives, whether they be positive or negative. But over time, and again, the purpose of this work is to retrain our nervous system, because over time, as we begin to learn how to regulate the nervous system, we can start to change our perceptions of some of the stimuli or stressors that we're encountering. And so managing the stress response. So how do we interrupt this cycle? How can we actually come back to our bodies and listen to what's happening to take control over this cycle, right? So mobilization is one. Again, this is the release of all of that energy that is activated through movement. Down-regulating the sympathetic nervous system and up-regulating the parasympathetic nervous system. And we'll get into some practices and exercises that can help you do this in a bit. So when we down-regulate the sympathetic nervous system, we're, removing the stressor, we're kind of bringing that response back down, and through upregulating the parasympathetic nervous system. This basically means we're activating the parasympathetic nervous system. This is the piece that is bringing us back to that state of homeostasis, really. And so we're activating that part. And, we'll also talk a little bit about practices that help with vagal tone. And if you're not familiar with this term, it comes from, the health of the vagus nerve, basically. And the vagus nerve is the longest cranial nerve in your body. It starts in your brain and moves down through your upper body. It helps with so many different functions, including, health of your immune system, helping combat inflammation, emotional regulation. We're not going to get too into this because we just don't have the time. But basically, vagal tone means the health of your vagus nerve. And vagal tone is correlated with your capacity to regulate your stress response. So the healthier your vagus nerve is, the more able you are to deal with the stressors that come up in your life. So here are some practices and tips to manage stress. You may have heard of some of these, you may have not heard of some of these, and this is not a comprehensive list by any stretch. There are so many more things you can do, like getting out into nature. The healing and calming effects of nature are so powerful. I did not include that in this list. And I'm sure there are so many more, like tapping, other somatic practices. But today we're just going to focus on some of these because I think it gives a good variety of different areas of health that you can focus on. So the first is diaphragmatic breathing. This is something that we practiced at the start of today's workshop, is just deepening that breath and really bringing it down into your lower belly. So when you're breathing, you don't want your, chest and shoulders and back to really be moving much, but you're mostly focusing on moving your diaphragm. So as you inhale, you expand your diaphragm, and as you exhale, you bring your diaphragm, you contract it. I don't like the word contract, though. It has such negative connotations, but basically you're moving it back in and bringing it closer into your spine. We'll put it that way. So I'll stand up here so you can see. So as you inhale, you expand. And as you exhale, bring it in. That is diaphragmatic breathing. Also helps with vagal tone. This is such a powerful practice, in my opinion, because you can do this anywhere. You can really, it's such an accessible practice. It's really just about bringing your attention to how you're breathing and giving yourself a couple minutes, even. It could just be 1 minute, it could be 2 or 3 minutes to just focus on breathing correctly. Cold therapy. This can be anything from a cold shower to dunking your face in some ice water. There's a ton of science behind this. It's really an amazing technique to use if you're dealing with chronic stress and anxiety. I highly recommend this. Toning or humming. This also helps with vagal tone. And, because it stimulates it through those vibrations that you're creating. So one way that I do this is I inhale through my nose usually. And then as I exhale, I just hum out the exhale. So it looks like this. Inhale. And you continue that hum for the entire length of your exhale until you've exhaled all of that air out. And this has also been a favorite practice of mine. I highly recommend it to anyone who is dealing with, again, chronic stress, chronic anxiety. And as we're going through this, I encourage you to experiment with all of these different practices in your day-to-day life, because for some people, breath work might be the key, right? And for some people, toning or humming or, using singing or, vocalizing in some way, like vocally moving that energy through in some way is going to be key. And sometimes a combination of all of these things is needed. So then moving on to gut health. So how many of you have heard of the connection between the gut and the mind, right? A lot of times the gut is referred to as the second brain. It's so powerful. If our gut is out of whack, if we're having digestive issues, if our microbiome is not quite right, that affects our mental health. That affects our ability to respond to stress. So this is huge. You can improve your gut health through eating foods rich in probiotics. Getting prebiotics into your diet is important as well. Eliminating processed foods like processed sugar, caffeine, alcohol. And, this is just kind of basic gut health stuff. If you really want to explore this, I do offer one-on-one health coaching, and I highly recommend working through gut health in that kind of setting, even if it's not with me. I think having someone who knows about this, knows the protocols for stuff like elimination diets and that kind of stuff, it's a lot more effective and helpful if you have someone supporting you through that. But you can make simple changes on your own, like I mentioned, incorporating probiotic rich foods, eliminating processed sugar and other processed foods from your diet, decreasing the amount of caffeine and alcohol that you consume. All of that you can do on your own. But if you really want to go more in depth, I highly recommend seeking out someone to support you with that. So mindfulness and meditation. When we practice mindfulness, we're bringing our attention more into the present moment, right? We're focusing on our environment, on what we're feeling, what we're sensing. And this is really helpful for getting our minds out of the monkey mind or logical state of mind and getting more into the feeling state, more into the body. And through mindfulness and meditation, I feel like this is where a lot of mindset shifts can happen. And of course, there are other tools that we can use for mindset work, which we'll actually be having a wonderful guest speaker, Bryn DeVore. She is a mindset coach. And yeah, I'm so excited for that workshop and for you guys to experience it. We'll be working through limiting beliefs and doing some mindset work. So we'll get more into that kind of stuff later on in the series. ASMR, if you're familiar with that, that is also very effective. A lot of people use that at night when they're trying to fall asleep. And my favorite, mindful movement. This, I think a lot of these, I think toning and humming can fall into the category of mobilization practices, but mindful movement is so powerful. It's so powerful for releasing energy, and kind of bringing some of the mindset work that you're doing into the felt sense of the body. When it comes to integrating stress management practices in your everyday life, we can often come across some obstacles, right? Like, I don't have enough time, I'm too busy. Or maybe when you get home at the end of the day, you're so exhausted, you're so tired that you don't have the energy to even think about holding space for yourself in this way. That is totally valid. So I take a slightly different approach. I think having a separate practice or routine where you have some of the practices that we talked about incorporated into that is very helpful. But the reality of our lives is that sometimes you skip a day of your routine. Sometimes you don't practice for a week, right? And it happens to me. So in these cases, I focus more on what you can do throughout your day to support this work, rather than shaming or judging yourself for whatever. Focus more on, throughout the day, maybe bring some awareness back to your body. Listening to the signals and sensations that your body is sending you, because this is information that we can use to make decisions for ourselves, right, throughout the day. So if we learn how to tune into this more, and we'll get into this a little bit more in next week's workshop, which is all about connecting with our intuition, and learning to listen more to the language of our body. When we learn to do this, we're able to work through difficult emotions more effectively. We're able to release tension and density in the body that can, if not released, lead to some chronic illness. And we can really create these little micro spaces for processing throughout the day instead of having everything build up and then just overflow. Yeah, I think when we kind of take this more embodied approach, we're able to manage what's going on more, and we're able to prevent the exhaustion and burnout stage that we talked about earlier. Awesome. All right. So we're just going to take a moment now and do a quick practice that involves some mobilization. It involves, becoming aware of what the sympathetic nervous system is doing, how the activation of it feels inside of our body, and how we can move through some of that energy and release it. So I would say I think it's best to do this practice standing up. So if you're in a space where you can stand up, I highly recommend doing that. Just gonna adjust the camera here. So first we're gonna start off by doing a little bit of shaking. If you've been sitting down for a while or you need to just go ahead and stretch your body out for a moment. Don't think we stretch enough. And then just start by shaking. You can start with your feet and then move up to your legs, to your hands, really shake it out. Maybe you do some hops. And just get some of that energy flowing. Allow that energy to build inside of you. And we're not really adding too much like movement to release the energy quite yet. We're just kind of allowing it to build up here. And this is what one of my teachers, Dr. Scott Lyons, calls bubbles, is we're feeling these bubbles activate and build up inside of us. So we're just feeling those bubbles. And then we can start to tap a little bit. Tap on our arms, feeling those bubbles activate. Maybe tap our legs a little bit. We can add some more shaking, maybe some more hopping. Start to notice how these bubbles feel inside of your body. So now we're going to find a wall because we've built up all of this energy within us and we need a way to release it. So I'm going to use this wall back here. Actually, I'll be using that wall so you can kind of see the process that I'm about to do. And I'll just show you once how to do this exercise, and then you can, yeah, do it on your own and just see how you experience it. Right, so we're building up those bubbles. And I don't think my microphone can extend out too far. But okay, so basically what we'll be doing is we'll be pushing against the wall. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to do this and then guide you through the activity so you can do it on your own. So again, building up the bubbles, and then we push against the wall. So now that you kind of saw how that works, go ahead, make sure you got those bubbles activated within you. And go ahead and push into the wall, push yourself back, and just allow yourself to receive the support of the wall as you push back. You're allowing that supportive energy to flow from the wall through your hands and into the rest of your body. And just take a moment and notice how that feels inside of your body when you allow that supportive energy to spread through you. So let's do it one more time. We'll hop up a little bit, hop up and down. Allowing those bubbles to build up. And we'll add some tapping. Again, activating that energy. Maybe add some hopping back and forth from one leg to the other. And this time, when you push against the wall, make sure you're really coming down and pushing back, kind of like you would do a push-up on the floor. Because we don't want to be pushing with our arms really tense, because then we're not really allowing ourselves to receive, right? And we don't just want to collapse into the wall, because yeah, then we're not really like mobilizing that energy that we want to release. So let's go ahead and do the wall push again. Ready? Go. And then when you push back, again, notice what kind of sensations you're feeling inside of your body. Maybe how it's moving through your body. And if you want to pause it here and explore this practice, I highly recommend that you do so. It's again, just like this push back from the wall and allowing that supportive energy to meet you and to spread through your body. Okay. So that is a mobilization technique. So just because we're a little short on time today, I'm gonna ask that you send any questions to me afterwards or in the chat. Right. And now we are just gonna end with a nice closing practice. So go ahead and find a comfortable position, either sitting or laying down. whatever will allow you to release, the tension and well, any tension that might still be in your body um, after that practice. And when you're ready, you can close your eyes. Maybe put a hand on your chest and a hand on your lower belly if that feels supportive to you. And let's just tune back in with our breath. Inhaling in, exhaling out. Notice if your breath feels different than, at the beginning of this workshop. Just allow yourself to sink deeper, deeper into your breath, deeper into a state of relaxation. Just allowing all of the information and practices that we learned about and actually did today just integrate within our bodies, just allowing it to flow. If you felt a release from our mobilization practice, if you felt that support, then just, take a moment and allow that energy to expand inside of your body, to flow into every crevice and nook or cranny inside of your body. And remember, as you go throughout your day today, if you feel overwhelmed or stressed, or just need a moment to come back to yourself and ground yourself, you can always come back to the breath. You can always come back to the practices and techniques that we talked about today. So when you feel ready, you can slowly come out of this state of relaxation. Maybe you want to add some movement, maybe wiggle your fingers or toes a little bit. And just come back to the present moment, thanking yourself for all the work we did today, for all of the work that you're doing every day. And go ahead and just give yourself a hug here. You can wrap your arms around you. Maybe pat yourself on the back. So just a few last things. Next Saturday, we will be doing a workshop called Tune into Your Intuition and Expand Your Vision. I'm still working on the content for this, but basically we are going to be talking a little bit about human design and how you can use human design to connect with your intuition more. Of course, there are so many different ways of connecting with your intuition, and I will mention some of them. But for me, human design has been so effective at learning to listen to my body and make decisions that support my alignment. So we will be talking about that a little bit. We will be talking about the language of the body and how to, how to learn to listen to it so we can navigate the health and wellness industry and our own health and wellness journey from a sense of empowerment instead of a sense of confusion and overwhelm. And we will also be doing some goal setting. What are our goals for this workshop series? What do we hope to achieve by the end of it? And it won't just be limited to this series, but maybe what are you trying to achieve in your life for yourself? So we'll kind of be talking about that a little bit and how to tune into your vision and explore that a little bit more. And I'm sure you'll notice that each of these workshops is going to have probably an element from all of the other workshops in it. And that's because all of these topics are so interconnected. And that's what I love so much about this work is that, yeah, everything just feeds off of one another. And as we develop our relationship with our body, our mindset work is going to up level and so on and so forth. So excited for next week. And I think, when just experiment with some of the practices that we talked about today, and we'll see how these practices can support us in next week's work as well. So if you're interested in exploring some of this work further, I do have a one-on-one offering. It is called an intuitive healing session. The one in particular that's very in line with the work we did today is called Cosmic Calm. It is all about stress management, working through anxiety, all that good stuff. So if you want to explore some of this work further with me one-on-one, I highly recommend checking that out. I also offer free weekly meditation circles where we explore some aspects of self-healing. We do guided meditations. Sometimes we experiment with energy work, with breath work. So many things that we do in those meditation circles. And it's really to support you in your own practice, in your own life, and just offer you a chance to come back to yourself and create some awareness about what is going on for you. And last but not least, we will have some Instagram lives coming up, so make sure to stay tuned for those. We are going to be touching on some topics that we won't go into depth in the actual workshops. So if you want some supplemental information or to get to know some of the guest speakers we have coming up a little bit more, Yeah, definitely tune into those. I think they'll be really great and they'll be super short and brief, so you can fit it into your crazy busy schedule. I know life is just kind of crazy for everyone right now, so this is really about supporting you. Um, awesome. Well, I think that's all I have for you today. I hope you have a wonderful Saturday. And oh, one thing I did want to note is that we will be shifting the time of our workshops to an hour later. The today and last week's were at 11:30 Eastern Standard Time. And starting next week, we will be starting at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So just want to make sure that you note that time change. And yeah, have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you all next week, hopefully. All right.